Hey y'all, this is William, the Permaculture Consultant, and today I'm going to show you guys 5, maybe even 6 different ways you can use your compost. Because believe it or not, fertilizing your garden or just adding it to your garden, is one of the least efficient ways to use it, but also there's many more ways you can use your compost, especially, and I'm talking about homemade compost. And if you want to learn how to make your own homemade compost and stuff like that, hit up one of my previous videos. Also, Midwest Preparedness Conference is coming up 3rd week of September. I'll link that down below as soon as it's possible. If you need a soil biology test to determine how much compost you need, how good your soil is and stuff like that, shoot me an email. And if you need an on-site consultation where I come out to your property and give you a game plan, what to do, when to do it, where to do it, then hit up the email down below. With that being said, let's get into the video. Now, obviously, like I said a second ago, this only applies to homemade compost. If you're buying store-bought compost, well, sadly, it's not worth what you paid it for it because there is no biological life in store-bought compost. I don't care where you go, everything that I've ever tested has only had a nematode extract applied to it right before either bagging or shipping. So just keep that in mind. Make your own compost. Even if you do it badly or poorly, it's still 10 times better than anything you can buy at the store. Now, the first most obvious method of using your compost is directly in your garden. Now, a little key tip, if you are doing that, you can apply way less of it than you may have previously thought. Like, a lot of people will add a thick layer to their raised bed. These are raised beds right here. And a lot of people will add like a thick layer to it because they're treating it as a growing medium, which you can totally do that and there's no problem with it at all. But if you're pretty limited on the amount of compost you have, then you need to be a little bit more efficient with it. So what you can do instead is just add like a thin sprinkling of compost on top of your raised beds, your like in-ground garden, any method of gardening. You can just add a thin layer to the surface and then call it good. Make sure you water it in afterwards so that way it knocks off the organisms from the compost and gets them into the soil bed. Now, this bed right here is the sweet potatoes in it. I just planted them, so they're not growing yet, and that's also just a test. This bed I have watermelons, peppers, and a little bit of spinach in it, and then this next bed I have tomatoes back in there, which I have not pruned at all, and I have no... Side note, here's the power of soil biology, is that you can clearly tell that these tomatoes are a bunch, like they're just a mess. I should be getting mildews and all that stuff within these tomatoes, the blossom rot, all that type of stuff, or end rot and stuff like that, and I'm not getting any of it. I have a couple of ugly tomatoes, but they're still 100% edible, and they're just a little bit ugly. But I should definitely be getting blights in here, but I'm not, because the soil is in the process of getting healthy. This is still the first season of growing in here, so there's not been a whole lot of remediation done here, or not a whole lot of time for the remediation to take effect. But point number one, the whole gist of point number one is, yes, you can use it to directly feed and fertilize your gardens, but just use far less of it than you think. It's just a light sprinkling and then water it in and then you're good to go. Now, method number 2 is a soil drench via compost extract. Now, you can take, and I've shown videos of exactly how to use your compost extract before, but this is the most efficient way to use your compost. What you're doing is you're taking a handful of the compost, you're putting it in a mesh bag, right? And then you dunk that mesh bag in a bucket of water. And it could be a tank, it could be a bucket, kind of depends on your scale. But you want to make sure that water is ambient temperature. So if it's 50 degrees outside, you want to make sure that water is about 50 degrees. If it's warmer, then it needs to be warmer. The point is that you're not shocking your organisms once you dunk them in that water. You want it to be like an easy transition, and you want to baby them because they are, you know, living organisms, and you don't really, like, it's going to be hard enough once you put it into your, you know, crappy soils and stuff for the organisms, and it's going to take a couple applications for them to take a hold and actually change the soil. So you don't want to damage them before they actually get there. So compost extract, I have a whole video on how to make compost extract. It's the most efficient way. Also, cool little tip about compost extract, and a really cool aspect of it is that once I take that handful and then I strip the organisms and like suspend them in the water, I can take that handful of compost and I can put it back in my compost pile to get re-inoculated. And I can do that for about 3 months as the compost is at its peak biology. Also, the extract that I make, if I take a couple of handfuls and I do that in a 5-gallon bucket, that bucket can be diluted up to 20 times. That's why I make the claim that most farms, homesteads, and all that stuff really only need to make one good, high-quality compost pile per year, And using soil extracts, you can fertilize everything on your farm with that compost. Let's go on to step number 3, or method number 3. Now, before I get into step number 3, I should also mention that the compost extract does not have a shelf life. Like, you want to make it and then immediately use it. So if you're making it, if you need to use it off site somewhere, then what I would recommend doing is just bring your water and your compost separately with you, inoculate it on site, and then apply it on site, because the organisms can survive within the compost environment that you've created for them pretty doggone well. But once you put them in the water, then they start using up the oxygen in the water, and then it's just a ticking, you know, time bomb after that. So if at all possible, bring the ingredients separately, get to the site, and then apply the compost make and apply the compost extracts, and you'll have far better results. Now, method number 3 is a foliar spray, which really applies mostly to your trees, your fruit production on your trees, like fruit crops, nut crops, all that type of stuff. Even ornamental, like every living thing is going to benefit from your compost. But this one's a little bit more difficult because you're having to make a compost tea. Now, the difference between compost tea and compost extract is that if I take my extract and I, cover and I spray the leaves with the compost extract, the organisms haven't had enough time within that liquid to develop glues and glue themselves to or inorganic and organic material yet. So next rain event, a lot of them are going to wash off. Now, the way you compensate that is that you just do a lot more applications of compost extract, because a little bit is always going to be left behind, unless you have like torrential downpours. But a little bit is usually always going to be left behind. Ideally, if I were to look at the leaf of this peach right here underneath the microscope, 70% of the 70 to 90% of the leaf's actual surface is going to be covered in soil biology, which stops the pests, the disease, anything trying to harm this tree. They don't have access to the tree because it's all covered in good biology. So if you're having issues with like cedar rust, for example, or if you're having issues with that one moth that comes, that coddling moth or whatever, that comes and messes with your peaches, just a little side note, I don't really pay much attention to pests that affect crops, because the answer is always going to be the same. The solution is always going to be the same. Compost teas, compost extracts, and just direct compost application. Now, on this little peach tree right here, I could actually do 3 methods that I've showed you guys so far. I could do the compost tea on the surface, I could do the compost extract as a soil drench, and then I could also take whatever compost I use for the teas and the extracts. Instead of putting it back into my compost pile, I could just mulch the tree with it itself in place. So 3 different ways to make this peach tree super, super healthy. If you haven't gotten the point yet, compost is pretty doggone important and literally can solve all the problems on your farm, other than what one guy asked about, like it's not gonna fix his credit line. So there's that, but it could eliminate your need for the purchase of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, as well as like fertilizers and all that stuff. It can also kind of remove you from the maintenance of a system as well. That's a little bit more heady, that's a different video, but on to method number 4. Now this next one's gonna be, again, a little obvious to some of us, but it's potting soil. So there, I think I have some cucumbers, I have some sugar cane over there, I got some blue bonnets over here, and then just field of comfrey right here. But you can use your compost as a potting soil mix as well, and it's going to be 10 times better, and you're going to have way more higher germination rates than you would the store-bought compost, or the store-bought potting soil, I should say. Now, depending on the species, most of the time you're going to have to mix a little bit of builder sand in with it, which isn't like play sand, it's more like sharp sand. But yeah, you mix, like, if it's a ratio, maybe 25% sand, 75% compost, and then you should be good. You can even get a little bit more elaborate with it and do 25% sand, 25% coconut coir or peat moss, and then 50% compost if you wanted to. Whatever it is, you can even buy compost or potting soil and then inoculate it with the extract, and then use that as a potting mix as well if you wanted to. But the point is, it acts as a fantastic potting soil. And also a benefit of it is that if I take some potting soil and I put a seed down in it, that seed is growing in the good biology. So as it, germinates and rises and hatches and gets bigger and bigger, it's all covered in that good biology. So you don't have to worry about your extracts or your compost teas afterwards, because it's already covered in that good biology. And wherever you plant it, as long as you don't do anything to disturb or kill that good biology, then you'll be good to go. Sowing your seeds in your compost made potting mix is one of the best things you can do for your garden. And this even applies to like tree potting soils as well. If you do it with your tree, even better, because that whole tree is going to be covered in good biology. Yeah, if at all possible, start your seeds, plant your little seedlings and stuff in your good compost biology potting mix, and you'll have way less problems in the future. And now we're getting into some of the rarer methods of using your compost. So this right here is the chicken tractor on steroids. It's not in full production right now just because I am gone all the time, but I do have one pile out, and then their compost ring, which is where they get fed right there. But if you're tired of spending a fortune on chicken feed and eggs aren't cheaper, like raising your own eggs, you're realizing that raising your own eggs isn't cheaper than the store-bought eggs, like the only solace you get out of it is knowing where these eggs come from, then do the chicken tractor on steroids. Believe it or not, the vast majority of their protein comes from that compost pile. You can get to the point where you completely eliminate store-bought feed once the chicken tractor on steroids is in full-blown production and everything. But that compost pile, they will scratch it down by the end of the day, and they will derive a bunch of their protein just from the biota in that compost. Because remember, the benefit of compost is that we are growing the organisms required to make everything healthy. So there's a bunch of organisms in there that the chickens can actually see and they'll actually eat. So if you can dedicate the labor to it, then I highly recommend doing the chicken tractor on steroids method, just because it makes, like, if you have chickens in production and you intend on selling either the meat or the eggs, this will raise your profit infinitely. Like, you can eliminate your feed bill. So all you would then have after the first 2 weeks of the chicken's life, in the first 2 weeks of the chicken's life, you'll have to buy like chick feed just so they can make that transition into the chicken tractor on steroids. And then after that, it's all profit. It's all profit after that. So look into that system. I have one video on it. Permapastures Farm has 3 different playlists on the chicken tractor on steroids. So check that out. They do it with the layers. They do it with like store-bought layers, like they bought the chicks. They do it with the meat birds or broilers. And then they also do it with like home hatch chicks as well. So 3 different playlists, different applications. Check it out. It could change your farm. This could become a closed loop system. The compost plus the food scraps from the house plus the garden scraps from the garden could become literally a closed loop system, and then who's going to tell you what to do if you have all your food squared away at home? Now this next one is for all you people with funky feet. You're going to take, believe it or not, you're going to take a couple of handfuls of the compost, right? And then you're going to fill up a little tote with water. Remember, make sure it's like ambient temperature water so that way you're not killing the organisms. Then you're going to take off your shoes and your socks, and you're gonna put them in the tote with the compost. So if you have any fungal issues, if you have any bacteria infections, if you have like athlete's foot or something like that, soak it in compost. Like, this is something that a lot of people are taught in their permaculture design courses, that good compost can get rid of foot issues. And if you think about it, it totally makes sense. Like, what are the infections that are bothering your foot? The fungal diseases, or not diseases, but the fungal issues that people have with their feet, the bacteria issues that people have with their feet, athlete's foot, stinky feet in general, all those are caused by anaerobic organisms infecting their feet. So take a handful of this compost, throw it in the tote, add water, and then soak your feet in it. And those aerobic organisms can all start competing and attacking the anaerobic organisms that are, attacking your feet. So you're bringing basically an army to come and protect your feet. These are, you're hiring mercenaries for your feet. That's what you're doing. You're hiring mercenaries for your feet, or you're growing mercenaries for your feet. Think of it as like the Clone Wars. Yeah, you're just growing your own like army to come and protect your feet. Believe it or not, I'm pretty 90% sure that it works. I've done it before in the past, and it did kind of help with like funky feet and athlete's foot. Because, doing jiu-jitsu, you run into some funky people. But check it out. Give it a shot. If you have any foot issues, then try doing, your little compost foot drench, and let me know how it goes in the comments. If you've done it before, let me know how it goes in the comments. And also any other applications of compost that you guys can think of, let me know down in the comments. One of the honorable mentions, and I don't know how this benefits necessarily, but it's something that I've noticed, is that anytime I make compost extracts or teas or anything like that, the dog goes crazy for it. Like, the dog will always go over there and start trying to drink the compost teas and extracts. So I imagine it's going to be good for, you know, her gut health and stuff like that. I don't really recommend people doing that. If you have done it, then let me know. Not at all recommending people do it, but it is kind of curious that my dog will go out of her way to try to drink the compost extract, especially after I've, you know, just made it. And she has not had any negative issues from drinking the compost extract. So I imagine, like, all that aerobic bacteria and fungi and all that stuff is going into her digestive system and, you know, helping her out that way. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this expanded, like, some of your ideas of what you can do with your compost and how to use it a little bit more efficiently and stuff like that. But until next time, we'll see you.